I've always believed that history isn't just about the past, it's about who we are, what shapes us, and the stories we carry within us, even if we don't realize it. Growing up, I was the one digging through old photographs, asking endless questions about our family. Ao, my nephew, is so much like me in that way. After losing my sister, raising him felt like a second chance to keep my family's love for history alive. It was his idea to start the project. Aunt Martha, why don't we dig into our family's history? Who knows what we might uncover? His enthusiasm was infectious. I'd always wanted to explore my late mother's heritage. She used to tell me stories about resilience, love, and unspoken truths, but there were always gaps, pieces of the puzzle missing. This was a chance to finally connect those pieces. We started where all great searches begin, the library. It was a place we both loved, the smell of old paper, the quiet hum of curiosity in the air. Day after day, we sifted through birth records, marriage certificates, and crumbling letters. Then, one afternoon, while I was lost in a collection of handwritten journals, Ao called out to me, his voice tinged with excitement. Aunt Martha, look at this. He held up an old book, one that had clearly been untouched for decades. Inside, tucked between the pages, was a yellowed envelope. My heart raced as I took it from him. It was addressed to Elizabeth, a name I recognized from our family tree. The letter was dated 1902, written in elegant, flowing handwriting. As Ao read it aloud, my chest tightened with every word. Elizabeth, our love is a fire that cannot be extinguished, though the world tries to snuff it out. I will wait for you, no matter the cost. It was signed, Elijah. I should have been intrigued by the story of Elizabeth and Elijah, a love that seemed to defy every rule of their time. But as Ao read the letter, I felt something else. The words weren't just about them. They reached out to me, pulling at something buried deep within, something I wasn't ready to confront. Ao suggested we visit the old family estate, a crumbling relic of our history that had been left untouched for years. The estate was nestled on the outskirts of town, surrounded by ancient oak trees that seemed to whisper secrets of their own. As we stepped inside, the air felt heavy with the weight of the past, as though the walls themselves remembered every joy and sorrow that had taken place within them. In a dusty corner of the attic, we discovered portraits of our ancestors, their faces frozen in time. There she was, Elizabeth, with her soft smile and piercing eyes, and beside her, Elijah, whose expression spoke of both strength and vulnerability. Their portraits hung side by side, a quiet defiance against the world that had tried to keep them apart. It was there that we found the diaries. Elizabeth's entries were delicate but filled with raw emotion. They say our love is a sin, one passage read. But how can something so pure be wrong? My own blood turns against me, yet I cannot let him go. The words cut deep, not just for what they revealed about Elizabeth's pain, but for how eerily they seemed to echo struggles that still exist today. As we pieced together their story, Ao and I talked late into the night, the dim light of the desk lamp casting shadows across the room. Their own family betrayed them, I said, my voice trembling. Imagine being judged so harshly by the people who are supposed to protect you. Ao nodded, his eyes downcast, but he said nothing. His silence spoke volumes, though, as if he understood more than he was willing to share. Later that night, as we pored over another diary entry, our hands brushed while reaching for the same page. The moment lingered longer than it should have, and when I looked up, I saw a flicker of something in Ao's eyes, something that mirrored the storm brewing inside me. That night, I couldn't sleep. My thoughts raced with questions I didn't want to face. Was it possible that what I felt wasn't just a fleeting confusion? Or was it something deeper, something undeniable? The connection between us had always been strong, but now, it felt as though the echoes of Elizabeth and Elijah's story were pulling us into a conflict of our own. We spent hours in the study the next morning, poring over old family documents, desperate to uncover more of the truth. The more we unearthed, the darker the tale of Elizabeth and Elijah became. A final letter, hidden among papers in an old chest, sent a chill through my spine. It was written by Elizabeth, her handwriting shakier than in the earlier diary entries. She confessed, with brutal honesty, that she and Elijah had been disowned by their families for their forbidden love. They had planned to run away, to escape to a new life where they could love without fear. But their escape had failed tragically, and they were caught just before they could leave. The letter ended with her heart-wrenching plea, would rather die in his arms than live without him. I felt a knot tighten in my stomach as the weight of their tragic end settled over me. What could have driven them to such an extreme? And why did their story feel so close to our own? I glanced over at Ao, who had been silently reading another page. His expression was unreadable, but I saw the faint tremor in his hands as he turned the paper. The silence between us had been growing thicker, like a fog that we couldn't see through but could both feel pressing in on us. Finally, I broke. Ao, I said softly, my voice barely a whisper. What is happening between us? Why does it feel like everything we uncover about them, about our history, is pulling us closer together? Ao didn't look at me at first. His eyes stayed fixed on the letter in his hands, but I saw his jaw tighten, his breath catch. After what felt like an eternity, he finally met my gaze, his eyes filled with an anguish I hadn't seen before. I don't know, he admitted. I don't know why I feel the way I do, but I do. I can't ignore it. But Martha, it's wrong. It feels wrong, and I don't know how to make sense of it. Just as I was about to speak, the doorbell rang. It was a distant relative, unexpectedly visiting, throwing a wrench into our emotional turmoil. We quickly wiped away any trace of our unease and put on forced smiles, pretending that nothing had changed. But once the visit was over, and the silence settled back into the room, I could no longer deny what had been growing between us. I picked up Elizabeth's last letter again, reading it over and over, her words piercing my heart. How could I reconcile the guilt, the confusion, and the growing bond one felt toward Ao? The weight of the project had become too much for me to bear. Each page I turned only seemed to deepen the turmoil inside me, and I couldn't escape the pull of the past any longer. As much as I wanted to finish it, I had to stop. I had to end it before it consumed me entirely. Ao, we need to stop. This project, it's not healthy for us, I said, my voice trembling, almost as though I were speaking to myself more than to him. But Ao protested, his face pale with frustration. We owe it to them, Martha. Elizabeth and Elijah's story, our history, it matters. You can't just walk away from it now. I sighed, the internal battle raging inside me. Ao was right. Their story did matter. And yet, what if our own story mirrored theirs too closely? My heart couldn't bear the thought. Then, just as we were about to close the books for good, we found one last hidden entry in Elizabeth's diary. Her words, written just days before her tragic end, struck me to my core. I wish I had not let fear and judgment define me. Love, true love, is not something to be ashamed of. Her words were a revelation. I looked at Ao, my heart aching with the truth of them. But my resolve remained firm. I feel it too, Ao, I said quietly. But I can't ignore the love I have for my family, for what's right. As the episode ended, I spoke directly to the viewers. Love should uplift, unite, and heal, not tear us apart. Cherish the family you have. Don't let fear and judgment cloud your choices. If you've been moved by this story of love, loss, and the power of choice, make sure to subscribe to Bold Confessions for more stories that remind us of the importance of love and family.